Hey Blenders, it's Sean here to introduce you to a very special bonus episode of ReelBlend. And I say special because we have not one, but three guests this time out on behalf of the quirky indie comedy titled Brian and Charles. We have the co-writers and the two actors who play in the film, David Earl and Chris Hayward. And they're joined by their director, Jim Archer, for a very lively conversation about a very quirky film. The movie made a splash at the Sundance Film Festival for its themes about both friendship and loneliness. And so as part of the conversation with these guys, we got into the excitement that comes with getting chosen to go to the Sundance Film Festival for the very first time, but also the challenges that come with not being able to attend because the festival goes virtual, and still being able to somewhat participate via an event in London that they will tell you guys all about, and I think give you some pretty good insight into the journey that an independent film takes through the film festival circuit in the time of COVID. Also, this is a concept, a comedic concept that they've been working on for years. The guys had been doing it on stage, and we talk about the challenges of filming with the character of Charles, who, for people who have checked out the movie, is a life-sized robot that acts almost like a puppet. Even though Chris Hayward is inside of it and interacting with David Earl. And so the guys talk about the evolution of the character's design, some of the things that they could do in film that they weren't able to do on stage, and vice versa. And so hearing a lot about that process, I think, is really, really fascinating. Whether you've seen the movie or not, it might get you prepped and excited to go check out Brian and Charles when it hits a theater near you. So without further ado, our conversation on the ReelBlend podcast, a bonus episode on behalf of Brian and Charles with David Earl, Chris Hayward, and director Jim Archer.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the ReelBlend podcast. I am Jake, that is Sean. We are a very much filmmaker, craft-driven podcast, so please feel free to get as nerdy as you want or possibly can. So seriously, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to jump into this. I want to talk about the mockumentary style of filmmaking. How much of a difference does that style of storytelling, I guess, affect the different aspects of your creative process? Like when you know the story is going to be told like this, how does it affect the writing, the directing, the acting, and I guess just the overall feel for what this movie is going to be?
Yeah, I feel like it's sort of, it definitely affects the directing a lot, and the sort of, I mean, if we're going to get nerdy straight away,
please,
the coverage of everything. Like we're sort of like thinking about the logic of a fake crew the entire time and how they would cover a scene, and like there's things that like David and Chris wrote into this, like with sort of big action sequences, and like there's like car chases, not to do too many spoilers, but then you got to think about how that would be covered as a documentary crew and what like logic they would have. It's kind of interesting to think, okay, well, if they don't know this is going to happen, or maybe they do, like, where would they be? They can't if they can't be in the other car, they can only be in this car and stuff like that. So it took a lot of kind of like just thinking of it through the minds of a sort of fake crew, and like, yeah.
Did you ever backtrack because you started to maybe get a shot and then you go, wait, no, realistically, this shot like wouldn't be possible because they wouldn't have the forethought to be shooting this way or that moment?
Yeah, exactly. There were some things in the cut where we sort of maybe like broken the rule a little bit, and then when we put in the cut, we're like, this suddenly feels wrong. It doesn't look like a documentary anymore. So we just had to take it out and use like the more sort of the rougher shots and the sort of the shots with more movement. But yeah, and then also just like the sort of style kind of, we wanted it to feel like a modern documentary. So we used a lot more of those kind of like a bit more cinematic. We didn't use zoom lenses. We all kept it on primes, and yeah, and just that sort of atmospheric music and ambient kind of feel. Yeah, so it was interesting trying to update the mockumentary a bit.
For sure.
I know in the early stages, we talked about whether it should be a narrative format instead. I remember we had that conversation, but because of there were elements of the short film that we did that we always came back to that we liked, and just comedically, David being able to look straight down the camera and make little comments was just always so funny. We wanted to keep that as much as possible as well.
Yeah, and I guess drilling off of that, Chris, if you could, because a mockumentary style or even a documentary in general, one of the things that I love about the challenge of a documentary is you never really know what the end is going to be. So I just wanted to hear your process about how you guys cracked what the actual story of this film was going to be, what ideas were discussed, and if there was a time when the story ever really extended beyond the realm that it kind of occupies now.
Yeah, well, initially we just came up with lots of different ideas. Like we all pitched in, me, David, Jim, and Rupert, our producer. And I mean, it wasn't just where we were ending that was, the initial puzzle, but also even what the beginning was. Because in the short film, Charles already existed. So we did think, should we do it that way, where the feature starts, where he's already alive? But then we thought, well, you're kind of missing some fun by seeing that process and seeing him come alive. But then we thought, well, does he come? We had one idea where he came from space, where Charles came from space.
Oh, that's cool.
And a ridiculous idea where we find out it's from a planet full of Charleses. We had all these ideas that were so ludicrous. We had one idea where Brian is walking down a lonely lane and a truck drives past and Charles essentially falls off a truck.
Okay.
And in that instance, he was from Japan and he was trying to get back to Japan. So we just had all these slightly ludicrous ideas.
No, by the way, these are great.
Yeah, these are all.
I get, well, they're funny. And then we didn't even want him to be an inventor because we thought, that feels like a bit of a cliche where it's been done plenty. So there was a version where he was a sort of avant-garde artist who just built things. But it's quite a hard character to describe instantly to someone, to say, oh yes, this character, he's an avant-garde artist. Whereas if you just say, oh, he's an inventor, people go, oh, okay, cool. So,
David, every time they came up with like a new version of this character, did you have to start the process of molding him and building him? And then how many different versions of Brian existed in your head before you guys sort of chiseled down to the last one?
Honestly, I sort of don't think about it until I put the glasses on. Because I've been doing him for years. He's been a taxi driver. He's run a cafe. We just alter him to fit the situation he's in. So, So we came up with inventor. Oh, right, he's an inventor now, is he? Fine. What next?
Sure.
He'll be an ice skater or something in the next one, yeah.
Speaking of Charles, I want to talk about the design of Charles. Obviously, it's Brian using a washing machine and a mannequin head. I'm sort of curious how many different designs were gone through, were considered, and how much time was spent thinking about what Charles was going to look like and be made out of.
I don't think enough time went into it. But for the short film, so we used to perform it as a live comedy act. And it was just a cardboard box with a mannequin head. So I built the original one. And then for the feature, so our production department got hold of that. And we wanted to improve it as much as we could, but they ended up pretty much sticking to what we already had. So the cardboard got upgraded to a more of a heavier plastic. I had bamboo inside to strengthen it. But for the most part, it was pretty much the same, yeah.
Fancy lads.
Where is Charles today?
Well, I've got one of his heads.
Oh, please let us see that.
Yes!
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
And it looks like my head. So so that is the one that Brian finds in the trash heap that inspires him. Yeah,
we made like 6 different versions of the head because there were like versions where he like vomits oil or like a mouse comes out of his mouth. So we cut the back of his head off and put like a pipe through it. But then we just cut all those scenes, so it was like we only needed.
Yeah. So Jim, Charles reminds me of essentially Bruce the shark from Jaws, in that it has to work a certain way, and if it doesn't, then you're not getting the goal of the scene necessarily that you're aiming for. So were there some instances where essentially Charles wasn't the most cooperative, and what kind of nightmares did you run into on set?
I mean, Charles was pretty cooperative. I think the thing, like, remember the first day where like we brought Chris out as Charles and we're just in this valley. It was just super windy, and like immediately, like Chris was like basically struggling to stand up a bit. And there was a sort of moment there where we're just like, oh God, this is is this going to be the whole shoot where just, and it kind of actually was, like Chris is struggling for 4 weeks. But yeah, there was nothing like, I don't think there was anything too tricky on my behalf. I think all the difficulties were Chris based.
I think sometimes Jim would have to say, can you turn the head to the left a bit? So he's looking, because I couldn't quite tell where the head was pointing. So if it was having a conversation with David, that was my main direction, was, can you turn the head to the left a bit? Or
yeah, it was like sort of breaking all the rules of directing. I was just sort of telling him exactly what to do with his hands and face.
you sort of have to, though, because I'm basically blindfolded in there. So
yeah.
That's
and
a
Chris,
lot of trust.
You said you've been doing it live for such a long time. So how has that process evolved then? How difficult was it for, in the earliest days of figuring out how to make it credible?
I don't know about making it credible. I just wanted to look, in the comedy act that we did, I just wanted it to look really quite preposterous. And it's really tall as well. So we had one moment in our comedy act where the audience would come in and I'd be under a big sheet. So I'd be hidden and they wouldn't know what it was. And then David would do about 20 minutes and then pull the sheet off. And then I'd suddenly stand up and people just didn't know what on earth to make it. So we just wanted to make it really quite ridiculous, but it stayed pretty much the same since the initial version.
Is there a scene that you guys added to the final film that you didn't perform on stage that you now look back and are like, hey, it would have been really cool if we had gotten to do that one on stage?
Oh, wow. Well, in the film.
Well, on stage, which we didn't put in the film, me and Charles kiss.
Oh, yeah. We had a...
Oh. Yeah. Okay, walk us through that. Walk us through the psychosis of that one, please.
I feel at that point, I think we're running out of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to watch that. It's not.
There are some old clips on YouTube of our old gigs that we did. Yeah, and they look quite mad now when you watch it.
You know the film Dead Man's Shoes?
No. I do not. No.
Oh, right. Oh, we did a live show with Paddy Considine and we recreated one of the scenes from that film. That was good fun. But yeah.
Well, speaking of extra scenes, we get to see a lot of Brian's inventions. We get to see the egg belt and the pine cone bag and the cabbage bin. And honestly, it just made me realize I could watch a 2-hour film of Brian just showing different inventions to the camera. I could keep watching them. Please tell me that there were a lot more that didn't make the final cut, because I just want to see an extended cut of this where it's just Brian just showing different inventions.
There's like a half-hour take. There was almost like a half-hour continuous take, that scene where he's showing all the inventions. So like there is one, it's probably somewhere of just David slowly losing his mind just as he's going slowly through the inventions and trying to explain each one. Because we just had so many. We just had shelves full of stuff that Hannah, the production designer, had made or found. That just we had no idea what they did as an invention. We just put them there and then got David to sort of try and make up what they did on the spot.
So wait, they weren't written. They were just random props, and then David, you had to look at them and determine what this random item could possibly be an invention of?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple that were written, like the egg belt.
Which I love. Oh, everyone needs one.
It's useful.
Yeah.
The pine cone bag, which... Did you love that?
When you have too many pine cones at one place...
Yeah, that's what
you got to just put them around the bag.
But yeah, like the helmet that sucked air out, and I walked in there. I was like, "What the hell am I looking at? What really going on this?" Yeah.
So I'm sorry for not knowing this specifically, but did you guys get to travel to Sundance with the film? I know the film was in there, but did you guys get to go?
No, unfortunately, it got sort of put online like 2 weeks before, so we had everything booked, and then it was canned.
But we managed to do we had a showing in London, and we managed to do a live Q&A to people who are watching online. So we did have a little celebration for it.
Well, but tell me about the day that you guys found out. Now that you say that, I do remember the Sundance went completely virtual this year. The day you find out that you're getting accepted into it, though. I mean, the festival still holds, such a place of prestige. It must have felt fantastic. to finally to learn that a film you'd been worked on had been accepted?
Yeah, like total dream come true for me. Like that's like the one sort of festival that I would just hope to one day be a part of. So to get our first film into that festival was like, it was also the first time that we sort of realized that people liked it, because we hadn't shown it to anyone yet. So they were the sort of first people outside our little bubble to say like, we like it. And like, yeah, we want it at that festival. Yeah, such an important part of the whole film's kind of journey, really.
Chris and David, you guys too?
Oh God! Yeah. I mean, I was baffled as soon as the short got nice reaction, because we always found it funny. We always found the relationship funny, but we never thought anyone else would. So when we put the short on YouTube, that got a nice reaction. It was like, oh right, maybe we're not mad. And then Sundance, and yes, and then we won the London Sundance Award last Sunday. It was, yeah, amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't really, I still sort of can't believe that, really. And even when we were there at Sundance, at the London version, I just thought, is this genuinely the actual Sundance, or is it like a sort of pretend one?
It's a reality show where you're the victim.
It's real. Yeah, it's brilliant, really.
I do love that idea of, you mentioned, David, that you have jokes amongst your friends, and you're absolutely convinced that, like, no one else was gonna, because even like Sean and Gabe and myself, we all have jokes amongst just our podcast, and I'm pretty sure if I ever try to explain them to anyone, they would just look at me just puzzled and have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. So
sometimes we look at him
that's
puzzled.
Fair.
Sometimes
that's true. That's true.
That's what I'll do.
Well, speaking of people's reactions, I want to kind of go back to performing this on a stage. So you guys know the moments in the show, the beats that yield like the biggest reactions from a live audience, because you've heard the people in front of you. I'm curious how much those memories of what people did and did not react to, you brought those memories over to inform decisions that you made for the movie.
Yeah, well, there's certain things, like when we're like something simple like dancing, like Charles dancing, always got such a mad reaction because it looks so stupid, and they would dance together. So something simple like that would take over. But
them just trying to communicate with one another, and the pregnant pauses, sort of Brian or me waiting for asking Charles a question, and then waiting for Rupert, the producer, who's at the back of the room voicing the robot. So I'd have to wait 20 seconds for a simple yes to come out of the robot's mouth. So those are always sort of really delicious moments, and we made sure we kept those awkward silences in the movie, didn't we?
Also,
I love that.
All the repetition as well. The fact that Charles always repeats himself is just because Rupert can just press return and it.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that's what it is. Just faster. But then that like leads into Charles being this thing who just keeps repeating himself. It's like, all right, mate, shut up.
Yeah.
So Jim, to that end, because editing is so important to comedy, can you just talk about your editing process and how you found those beats, the moments of silence that let a laugh line hit even harder?
Yeah, I mean, we basically cut all the silence out, really. But no, we did. No, we kept it in for the talking heads and stuff like that. But what was amazing about the edit was just how much we could just rewrite what Charles said, and like because it's all like a text to speech software. Like it could even be like the same line, but we'll be like, oh, maybe we want him to like add a comma there, or to say that word in a slightly different way. So we'd like try and spell it differently, so he said it in a funnier or a way that made more sense. So it was like you could totally, there was almost like this other level of writing that we all did at the end, where we're just like, okay, we can just give Charles completely new lines.
And because he's sort of expressionless, you can rewrite his lines, and he can portray that. He can be angry or sad because his face is the same.
True.
So guys, it's interesting to think about the progression of the story from live on stage to a short film in 2017 to the film that we're talking about today. With that being said, I'm curious as to what the next step is. Like, are we thinking like a cinematic universe? Like, are we going to sort of like look at what Marvel's doing and then start bringing over, maybe like do a multiverse? Like, what pop culture robot would we bring in to interact with Brian and Charles?
Wow, yeah.
I sort of remembered a film that I loved, a robot film the other day, Batteries Not Included. Do you remember?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, yeah.
I loved that film. So if those little flying robots could enter that world, then I'm all in for that. But yeah, I don't know.
It's the next logical step.
Yeah. I like weird science. So Kelly, we said Kelly LeBrock was a robot, wasn't
Kelly LeBrock.
Yeah.
Yes. And a very young Robert Downey Jr. If you guys can afford, if you can afford his rate nowadays, it might be tough to get him into the
he
sequel.
Could come up the farm. She fancies.
I'm curious whose review meant the most to you, David. You said, that you were surprised to eventually learn that people outside of your bubble were entertained by this. But once the film came out and hit the film circuit and started to get critical reviews, whose opinion meant the most to you to hear, whether it worked or not?
Oh, wow. I mean, when Empire gave us a nice review, that felt pretty special. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, Sundance just backing it, and Empire, and I mean, without sounding cheesy, I was really chuffed that I've got a young boy. Well, I've got 3 boys, but I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and they're really into it. And my mum was really into it. So I was really, we set out to make something that's really accessible. And yeah, I felt like a hard thing, and hopefully we pulled that off. So that was nice.
I was afraid you were going to tell me that they weren't into it, because I have teenagers.
Well, my mum hates everything I do. so I was like, oh, thanks, Mum. Yeah.
I have teenagers, and the only reason they care is because their friends kind of like what I do. They kind of like what I do.
Well,
they don't really care, though.
Charles was sort of based on my eldest. When we were writing it, he was 14, 15. So I was going through a lot of those experiences with him, just him not wanting to spend time with me and me not wanting to let go. So when he came to the premiere in London last Sunday, my eldest, to watch it with me, and that was really nice. But he kept saying to me, "Oh, bloody hell, Dad, that's me and you, that is." Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we'll cover a film and it's based on a short film, and I think, oh, that's really cool that they made that journey. But very rarely am I inspired to retroactively go back and want to try to find the short film and sort of see kind of the acorn that turned into the tree. I'm curious, are you guys finding a lot of people are going backwards and now retroactively discovering the short film as a result of this one?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, I guess the film's still not like fully out yet. So I guess there's been a few reactions to that, but it's still just from those kind of festival audiences and people have like seen the previews. So but I think the majority of people so far are people who've sort of like have like seen the short and are coming to see the film because they know it. But yeah, I think there's been a few reactions like that where they're like, oh God, yeah, because Charles, when you see Charles in the short compared to the feature, you're like, he looks horrible. Like it looks like he's like been on drugs for like 3 years or something.
I will get you guys out of here on this one, and I guess Jim, I will start with you. Is it difficult waiting after a film performs, at a festival in January, and then you're told, okay, wait most of the year before an audience gets a chance to see it?
Yeah, it's tough. And even when we finished it before Sundance, we finished it in June last year. So it's been like a whole year of just like sitting on this thing. And also you watch it over and over again. You're like, oh, I'd change that bit and I can't anymore. So I'd almost just like, get it out so I can just like, people can just start reacting to it and I can stop thinking about it.
Chris, same with yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I just want it to get out there really, because it's been such a long process. And I just want it to be released. In the UK, it's not out for another 3 weeks, I think. So I just think, okay, just get our film out before something else gets closed down.
Well, we are very excited for people to get a chance to see it, and we can't wait for to have you guys back on the show sometime soon with the next thing you guys work on. So thanks so much for joining the ReelBlend podcast, guys, and continued success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Of course, we want to thank the guys for stopping by the show and joining us for that conversation. Make sure you check out Brian and Charles, which should be playing in limited release at a theater near you, and then I'm sure making its way to streaming in some way, shape, or form. The reason why we have these guys as our bonus episode this week is because we have a very special episode dropping on Friday as part of the main show. We've teased it on social media. We can officially say it because it's happened. Tom Hanks is joining the ReelBlend podcast. And Jake is still not okay, as you guys might imagine. He is promoting Elvis. We were all in Memphis in order to do the press junket for Elvis, and Tom Hanks agreed to come on the ReelBlend podcast. It was amazing. I'm not overselling it when I tell you guys that it's everything that you want it to be, and then some. We cover so much of Elvis, of course, but also several stops along the way of his career, with a ton of stories that are told in only the way that Tom Hanks can tell them, and I think, approached in the very unique way that the ReelBlend interviews have become defined by, in terms of the way that they're driven by passion, and asking things that are outside the box that I think he really appreciated. So that's coming on Friday. Make sure you are back here to check out the Elvis interview with Tom Hanks on ReelBlend. To make sure that you see all of our interviews and all the full shows and all the fun things that we get to do here on ReelBlend, make sure you hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we'll be back with more episodes of ReelBlend and bonus episodes just like this one today sometime soon.